prayer for me. When Scott and I first came to Unity, I was a little hesitant because it had been about 10 years since I'd last attended a traditional Christian church service, and I wasn't really sure 10 years was long enough. When we walked into this room, the first thing I saw was this sign right here. Many paths, one God. Am I too loud?
No,
Okay, I'm good.
close.
Close.
Yeah.
We're getting this mic thing figured out now, so you can hear me. I knew everything was going to be okay when I saw that sign, because this sign aligns perfectly with my own religious convictions. You may not know this, but one of my 2 jobs through the week is as a college professor teaching world religions. In my 20 years of teaching, I have read a variety of ancient texts from around the world. The more I have studied different religions, the more convinced I am that we are all ultimately seeking the same thing: union with the divine, however you want to call it, whose essence is unconditional love. I can hear that. The religions of the world offer many different paths back to union with the divine. Their differences arise from the cultures and the histories and the landscapes that shape them. And then you layer onto that the unique rules that communities built as they were growing in these religions. And then add onto that everyone's own personal, deeply personal experiences that shape every individual's understanding of God. With all of that variation, it's a wonder that we don't have 8.3 billion religions in this world, one for every person on the planet. Yet despite the diversity of paths, the longing is the same. The destination is the same. We're all seeking our way back to the divine love from which we came. My own path has led me through a wide range of religions and spiritual practices. I was raised in a very faithful Episcopalian family. My Episcopalian parents are here right now, supporting me. So Christianity was the first lens that I understood God through. And I loved God. I loved the church. I grew up, every Sunday we were in church. My best friend in youth group is still my friend today, and I can't say that for any of my other high school relationships. As an adult, I built a career in Christian education and formation, starting out as a Christian ed director, ending up as an academic dean for a theological college and seminary, which incidentally is where I met Scott. I also started my own business and wrote and published curriculum for youth and adults on spiritual formation, and did a lot of conference presenting, which is funny why I'm so nervous today after all of that experience. With that background, you'd think I would be firmly rooted in a traditional Christian worldview. But I've also encountered God in many ways that mainstream Christians might label unchristian, or even question my eternal destination. In fact, I once had a priest express sincere concern for my soul because he saw that I had a course in miracles on my bookshelf in my office. It's a good thing he didn't see Barbara Ann Brennan's Hands of Light on the other shelf. I'm fortunate, though. I've had enough transformative encounters with divine love to know, deeply know, that my eternal life is assured, just as I know are assured. We are drawn to live in resonance with the divine. And if we want proof of this, we can simply look at the long line of spiritual masters who have risen to give us teachings and examples that guide us back to God. Buddha, Guru Nanak of the Sikh tradition, Lao Tzu, Krishna, Zoroaster, Jesus, to name a few. Each offered a teaching shaped by their own culture, yet all pointed to the same truth, that we are one with the divine, and that we forget this, or doubt it, because we convince ourselves we are separate from God and from one another. There's a story in the Gospel of Luke that gives us a unique window into this illusion of separation and how we maintain it. And that's the story of Martha and Mary. The passage reads, Jesus was continuing toward Jerusalem and came to another village. Martha, a resident of that village, welcomed Jesus into her home. Her sister Mary went and sat at Jesus' feet, listening to him teach. Meanwhile, Martha was anxious about all the hospitality arrangements. Martha, interrupting Jesus, said, Lord, why don't you care that my sister is leaving me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to get over here and help me. And Jesus replied, Martha, Martha, you are so anxious and concerned about a million details, but really only one thing matters. Mary has chosen that one thing, and I won't take it away from her. Now, before we go any further, I want to bring out some cultural context here. We actually talked about a little bit in the wisdom teaching class. In the ancient Near Eastern world, hospitality wasn't optional. It was a sacred duty. A clean home, abundant food, attentive service, these were signs of honor and respect. Martha is doing exactly what a good Jewish woman was expected to do. Mary would have been raised with those same expectations. And honestly, how much has changed? I remember as a child when we would visit my grandparents, my grandmother greeted us at the door with, "Are you hungry? I have dinner made." My deceased mother-in-law did the same. My kids still talk about going to Grandma Gay's on the weekend and knowing that there would be chicken and cornbread and pinto beans and yellow cake with chocolate icing, which is Nicole's favorite, my oldest. And she would always encourage them, "Oh, there's more. Didn't you get enough? You need more." And now my kids will tell you, and Scott will attest to this, that when they come over, I'm pressing homemade bread and cookies and leftovers into their hands as they're trying to slip out the door to leave. It's like a compulsion. Even when I tell myself I'm not going to do it, it still happens. As like this weekend. Now, I want to say before the men in the room start eyes glazing, thinking that I'm only delivering a message to women, men have their own versions of this. You may not feel pressure to have the perfect house beautiful home, or everyone having a plate full of food as they come through the door. But many of you were raised with gender-driven rules that are just as rigid and just as exhausting. How about a real man provides? Don't show weakness. Boys don't cry. Handle it yourself. Don't ask for directions. Your worth is in your productivity. These expectations can be just as suffocating as Martha's. They can keep you just as trapped and feeling anxious, resentful, overburdened, and disconnected from the voice of God within. talk about Martha, think about Joe and the social rules he's been indoctrinated in. When I talk about Mary, think about Jack and what he's being called toward. Because Martha and Joe are not wrong for wanting to offer hospitality and fulfill responsibility. They're doing what they were taught. They're doing what society expects. And we all do that too. Most of us can relate to Martha. I certainly can. I'm living it right now. How often do we become consumed with doing or fixing or proving or controlling, worrying, comparing, and criticizing? For many of us, this is where we spend most of our waking lives, in the mental chatter of our survival-oriented minds. But I don't believe this is how we came into the world. We incarnated from a place of love. Our Creator is love. And that love is as fundamental to us as the air we breathe. We begin life in perfect connection with the divine, but as we grow, we accumulate experiences and expectations and interpretations, many of them misguided, about what is right and what is wrong, what is safe, what is dangerous, what is acceptable, and what is not. Slowly we drift away from divine connection, from love, and towards separation, which always expresses itself as fear. When we are aligned in divine love, we are immediately released from fear's grip. Fear loses its power. But as adults, we have spent a lifetime building prisons we don't even realize we're in. Our senses reinforce this illusion of separateness. Our eyes see different bodies that are not mine. Our ears hear voices and sounds that are not coming from within me. Our minds insist that our thoughts are private and isolated. I think adolescence is often the moment that we really feel this separation acutely. It explains depression and anger and confusion and the longing for connection that drives so many teenagers. So why do we learn to see ourselves as separate? Because being human is a gift. A chance to experience things and grow from those experiences that we could not experience as purely spiritual beings. But the longer we live in this physical world, the more we become grounded in physical concerns. We become aware of our physical mortality. We become afraid. And fear gives rise to ego. Now, I don't like to use the word ego because it has picked up a lot of negative connotations over time. I don't believe ego is a villain. It's a survival strategy. Its purpose is to make sure that we stay alive. You could say that your ego is like your own personal secret service. It's hanging out here, back here in the background, nearby, always assessing everything and everyone as potential threats. It's constantly whispering into the little headphone, which is that voice in your head. It's looking for patterns, and it builds stories designed to keep you safe based on those patterns. It even creates patterns that aren't even really there in its determination to keep you safe. And because you trust your Secret Service with your life, you believe unquestioningly everything it tells you. Chase Hughes, who's an expert in human behavior, describes ego as quote, the story you build to survive your fears. It is a protective suit stitched together from trauma, insecurity, expectations, and conditioning. I describe ego as self at center, and it happens up here. It's a way of being in the world where you operate as if you are the main character in the world, with everyone and everything around you as your supporting cast. I consider it autopilot for most human beings. It's where we mostly function. I am at the center of the world. But you cannot be in alignment with the divine while clinging to a story that, in trying to keep you safe, convinces you that you are small and separate. The ego, self at center, has a voice. If you get quiet, you can hear it. Why did she pause? Is this a good time for a bathroom break? How much longer are we going to be sitting here? Did I leave the iron on? It's chattering away inside your head, 24/7. It's the voice of fear, of judgment, of comparison, anxiety, and control. It wants to be safe. It wants to be right and valued, appreciated, validated, and loved. And the more we live from that voice, the more we feel the emptiness inside, the longing for something we can't quite attain. To live fully as human beings, to live our best lives, we must learn how to overcome the self at center and return to God. We must remember that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, not the other way around. And this brings me back to Martha and Mary. We understand now that Martha isn't just cooking and cleaning. She's immersed in a story about who she is, in a worldview that she's never questioned because it's the only one she's ever known. She's a fish swimming in water, unaware that she's in the water. So when Mary breaks the script, when she chooses to sit with Jesus instead of doing what a woman is supposed to do, Martha becomes resentful. Not because Mary is lazy, but because Mary is breaking the rules Martha believes she must obey. Martha is caught up in her self at center state, the vicious cycle of fear that leads to judgment and criticism and builds into resentment and bitterness, and then she becomes entrenched in that resentment. And her thoughts keep adding fuel to the fire. I have to make sure everything's perfect. I should be doing more since Mary isn't helping. What will people think if I just sit down like Mary's doing? Why isn't she helping me? Now, Martha and Mary both want the same thing. They're both long to be close to God. They both want to learn from the master teacher so they can find it and experience the joy and profound peace of being at one with God. And how do we know this? Because they invited Jesus, a controversial, boundary-breaking rabbi, try saying that 3 times fast, into their home. That alone tells us they were spiritually hungry. But once he arrives, Martha gets swept up in her self-centered need to survive socially. She's driven to look like the perfect Jewish woman who offers unparalleled hospitality. And meanwhile, Martha stepped out of the old story and into the new one. She is sitting at Jesus' feet, following her inner voice back to God. Martha cannot contain her resentment, and it all bursts out at Jesus. Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me with all the work? Tell her to help me. She's not scolding Mary, she's scolding Jesus. She's saying, you're not enforcing the rules. You're the authority. You're not doing your job. And Jesus, who left his ego behind a long time ago, responds gently but firmly. Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things, but only one thing matters. And Mary has chosen it. Mary has chosen presence over performance, connection over conformity. She's not rejecting hospitality. She's rejecting the belief that her worth is tied to it. Mary has given up self at center to move to what I call soul at center. She no longer sees the world as if she is at the center of things. She realizes God is the center of all things, and God is within her, waiting to guide her, just as God is within you, waiting to be heard. Now, I want to clarify that this story is not about being either Martha or Mary or identifying with which one you're most like. We're all both. Every one of us has a Martha or Joe inside, the part that's afraid and striving, comparing and worrying and resenting. And every one of us has a Mary or Jack inside, the part that longs for stillness and connection and reunion and unconditional divine love. Furthermore, there are many stories that trip us up and keep us limited and in a state of fear. Not just stories about how we define ourselves and our roles as men and women. We have so many stories about the way the world works and what reality is that we never think to question them. We're so used to them directing our thoughts and behaviors that we aren't even aware they are stories we created. Now, many of them we inherited from our parents and our grandparents and our friends and our culture. When we were young, we didn't know we had a choice about what to believe as the truth in the world. And most of us have never been taught to challenge the perspectives we see the world through. Adding to the problem is that the Martha voice, the ego or self at center, is loud and it shouts, it demands, it nags. It fills our minds with shoulds and oughts and what will they think. It's busy trying to protect us from things that it perceives as threatening to our existence, whether that's a perceived physical or social threat. Now notice that in the Luke story, Mary never speaks. And this is what the Mary voice is like. It's quiet. In fact, I would say that this voice isn't really a voice at all. The soul at center, which comes from a place of divine love and acceptance, guides us and gets our attention through gut feelings, urges, nudges we have a hard time ignoring. It expresses itself through feelings and emotions and longings and conviction. It may even express itself by bringing up memories and the feelings that are attached to those memories. The only way to make room to hear the Mary within us is to find compassion for the Martha within us. To soften towards the parts of ourselves that are afraid. Because if we cannot forgive our own fear-driven parts, how can we forgive anyone else's? And without forgiveness, we cannot fully return to God. Now, I wish I could tell you that I always choose the Mary voice, the soul at center that holds me in inner peace and compassion. But this week, my self at center Martha voice has had a lot to say. This week has been a master class in overcoming ego for me. Preparing for speaking to you today has stirred up all kinds of old stories. My perfection-oriented Martha voice remembered every instance of anxiety about public speaking I've had over the years, and I've had a few. And conveniently forgot the people who have come to me after a presentation, eager to share with me the aha moments that they had. Alongside perfection was imposter syndrome Martha, reminding me that I am a flawed and imperfect human being, and what wisdom would I have to offer to anyone? Conveniently forgetting that I spent 3 years writing a book on embracing compassion. And then there's the anxious Martha voice who kept me awake all night last night, logging every ache and pain, every sniffle, every hot flash, every stomach twinge, racing heart, and then worrying about stage fright and what might happen up here. And since I was already on a roll, my hospitality Martha had to kick into. We had company this weekend. My kids and grandkids all came over to celebrate my granddaughter's 10th birthday. And about Friday afternoon, suddenly the house had to be spotless. The windows needed to be washed, the floors needed to be mopped, the kitchen had to be spick and span. I mean, we just remodeled it. It has to look perfect. And I didn't have any fresh bread made, and I needed to bake a chocolate cake. As if my kids and grandchildren haven't lived in and contributed to every state of mess that house has ever seen. Martha wanted to be heard this week loudly. And I had to work, to really work, to let Mary come forward. Mary reminded me of the joy of spending time with my family, of sitting at the table with my kids and watching them catch up with each other in their lives and hearing what's going on for them, and then holding my grandson and playing with my granddaughters. Mary was reminding me that I have an opportunity to spend time with family. Cherish it. Mary also called up the memory of the first time I was called to ministry. I haven't had this memory come up for me in years, maybe decades. I was sitting in church one Sunday. I was about 17, watching our minister deliver a sermon. The sun was shining in through the stained glass window right down on me, and it was warm. I remember the warmth. And suddenly, I was filled with this indescribable depth of love and joy and conviction that this was how my gifts were meant to be used. That feeling was so strong that I remember feeling like I was literally going to levitate off the pew. My Mary voice was nudging me. Honor your calling. So this is what a spiritual path back to God looks like. It's not perfection. It's certainly not constant bliss. It is both Martha and Mary, or Joe and Jack. It's learning to honor the one important thing. Hear the inner voice beneath the ego voice. It's learning to move from self at center and fear to soul at center and divine inspiration. And this idea is expressed in all the world's religions, not just Christianity. Buddha teaches that suffering comes from within us. We create it. And Rumi writes, your task is not to seek love, but to find and remove the barriers you have built against it. We are born in union with God. Love is our default state. Fear, judgment, comparison, these are learned. They're stories that we pick up along the way. Releasing those stories, forgiving ourselves, is how we return to our original wholeness. I want to leave you with one final story, this one from a Buddhist tradition that illustrates this idea beautifully. Two monks are traveling home from another village. They're traveling in silence, practicing mindfulness with every step they take. They eventually come to a river, and there's a woman standing beside the river looking distraught. And she's unable to cross. So when the monks get closer to her, she asks them if one of them would carry her across the river because she couldn't get across. She couldn't swim. The older of the two monks picked her up, carried her across, and set her down. And then the two monks silently continued on their way back to their home village. Hours later, when they arrived at the village, the second monk said to the first monk, I can't believe you carried that woman. It's against our vows. We're not supposed to touch women. And the first monk replied, Brother, I set her down hours ago. You're the one still carrying her. Ego holds on. Love lets go. And that's the invitation for all of us. This week, it's the first full week of Lent if you follow the traditional Christian calendar. I want to challenge you to give up yourself at center. When your Martha or your Joe shows up, when you feel fear or comparison or judgment or the need to prove that you're right, pause. Take a breath and focus on the one important thing. Let the inner voice speak. Listen for Mary or Jack. Let divine love speak, because love is your default state. And when you return to love, you return to God. You return to union. You return to who you truly are. Amen. music from Deb now.
Be still and